of a cat. It sat square and stiff on its haunches, with upright forelegs, and in spite of the small scale, so good were the proportions, and so accurate the observation of the artist, that it gave the impression of being much bigger. As it stood on Hugh's palm, it was certainly small, but if, without the sight of it, I pictured it to myself, it represented itself as far larger than it really was. And the odd thing is, I said, that though it is far and away the best thing I picked up, I cannot for the life of me remember where I bought it. Somehow I feel that I've always had it. He had been looking very intently at it. Then he jumped up from his chair and put it down on the chimney-piece. "I don't think I quite like it," he said, "and I can't tell you why. Oh, a jolly bit of workmanship, I don't mean that. And you can't remember where you got it, you say? That's odd. Well, what about a game of chess?" We played a couple of games without much concentration or fervour, and more than once I saw him glance with a puzzled look at my little image on the chimney-piece. But he said nothing more about it, and when our games were over, he gave me the discursive news of the terrace. A house had fallen vacant and been instantly snapped up. "Not Naboth's?" I asked. "No, not Naboth's. Naboth is in possession still. Very much in possession. Going strong." "Anything new?" I asked. "Oh, just bits of things. I've seen him a good many times lately, and yet I can't get any clear idea of him. I met him 3 days ago, as I was coming out of my gate, and had a good look at him. And for a moment I agreed with you and thought he was a young man. Then he turned and stared me in the face for a second, and I thought I had never seen anyone so old. Frightfully alive, but more than old. Antique. Primeval." "And then?" I asked. He passed on, and I found myself, as has so often happened before, quite unable to remember what his face was like. Was he old or young? I didn't know. What was his mouth like, or his nose? But it was the question of his age which was the most baffling. Hugh stretched his feet out towards the blaze and sank back in his chair with one more frowning look at my lapis lazuli cat. "Though after all, what is age?" he said. "We measure age by time and say so many years, and forget that we're in eternity here and now, just as we say we're in a room or in Bagnell Terrace, though we're much more truly in infinity." "What has that got to do with Naboth?" I asked. Hugh beat his pipe out against the bars of the grate before he answered. "Well, it will probably sound quite cracked to you," he said, "unless Egypt, the land of ancient mystery, has softened your rind of materialism. But it struck me then that Naboth belonged to eternity much more obviously than we do. We belong to it, of course. We can't help that. But he's less involved in this error or illusion of time than we are. Dear me, it sounds amazing nonsense when I put it into words." I laughed. "I'm afraid my rind of materialism isn't soft enough yet," I said. "What you say implies that you think Naboth is a sort of apparition, a ghost, a spirit of the dead that manifests itself as a human being, though it isn't one." He drew his legs up to him again. "Yes, it must be nonsense," he said. "Besides, he's been so much in evidence lately that we can't all be seeing a ghost. It doesn't happen. And there have been noises coming from his house, loud and cheerful noises, which I've never heard before. Somebody plays an instrument, like a flute, in that big square room you envy so much, and somebody beats an accompaniment, as if with drums. Odd sort of music. It goes on often now at night. Well, it's time to go to bed." Again he glanced up at the chimney-piece. "Why, it's quite a little cat," he said. This rather interested me, for I had said nothing to him about the impression left on my mind that it was bigger than its actual dimensions. "Just the same size as ever," I said. "Naturally. But I had been thinking of it as life-size for some reason," said he. I went with him to the door and strolled out with him into the darkness of an overcast night. As we neared his house, I saw that big patches of light shone into the road from the windows of